Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Sorry, it's been quite a while since my last video. I'll show you what I've been up to. I'm working on a graphic novel and I even have a chart here showing myself how many pages I've completed, and that's keeping me very busy, sadly, and slowing down my video creation process. But we'll do as many as we can over the course of the summer. Today I'm going to be showing you the difference between two different styles of facial proportions when drawing the human head. And to get started, I'm going to draw both of the head shapes side by side with just one line vertically intersecting to show the sort of three-quarter point of view. Okay, so basically you see the same type of a head shape side by side here. This, I don't know, this one might be slightly larger. Sorry, I didn't intend to. But the key thing is that you've got pretty much a perfect circle here at the top of the head. Then when you're doing the three-quarter point of view, you want it to sort of dip in a little bit right around the middle, maybe just a touch below the middle of the head. Coming down to a point of the chin here. All of this, try to keep it subtle. You don't want it too pointy. You don't want this indentation to be too big. And notice that this is the back of the scalp here is sort of heading towards the side of the jaw, and if you can get that relationship between the two of them, that's going to help you for placing that line. Then both of them have pretty much the exact same kind of vertical line. That's going to help me place the nose and the mouth and even get the eyes properly spaced. So let's go ahead and put in the horizontal lines that are going to show us the two different types of eyes here. This one is going to be a little more proportional to real life. This one we're going to exaggerate and make the eyes larger than they would be in real life. And I think while I'm doing that, I'll also put in just one little line for where the mouth will go. Alright, so here's where things really start to diverge. Notice where this line is right here. This top line for the eyes is almost exactly halfway between the top of the head and the point of the chin. Whereas this line for these eyes, because we're making them larger, I would say it's slightly closer to the top than it is to the bottom. And then basically spacing these fairly narrow in proportion to the rest of the head. I mean, what is that? It's like less than 1/10 of the space, I'd say. Maybe even heading in towards 1/12, or you could even make it as small as 1/15, I suppose. This is all, you know, sort of eyeballing it, pardon the pun. And then, yeah, here, because we're going to make the eyes larger, we're widening it out quite a bit. I would guess that's about 1/6, maybe, of the height from the top to the bottom. The mouth here, what I'm doing in this one is I'm going to make the mouth a little larger. Again, more proportional to real life. Here we're shrinking the mouth to achieve a certain effect. I'll talk more about that later. And I would say basically the location of the mouth is pretty similar in both places. It's just the width that you want to pay attention to. All right, let's move on to drawing. We're going to draw the nose and the ears. Okay, not so much to say about this here, but do notice the placement of the nose here in relation to the mouth. You want this space between the bottom of the nose line and the mouth to be a little smaller, or considerably smaller, really, than the space between that line and the chin. And then this ear is barely visible over here. You see much more of it, and I would start pretty near this line. You know, both of them starts pretty near, maybe just a little below, and then the bottom of the ear lines up with the nose more or less. All right, let's go ahead and actually draw the shapes of the eyes and the irises into position. All right, now I'm not going to talk so much about drawing eyes. Everyone, you can find your own ways of drawing eyes, but notice the placement and the space between them. I think that's a part where you can sort of trip yourself up, is getting the eyes too close together. But you can see already, because of these initial guidelines, these are considerably larger. They almost appear twice as large, and we're already starting to get the effect that we'll talk more about later on. That you know, gives this face maybe a more youthful look or more innocent look. In any case, let's go ahead now and draw the eyebrows and maybe just a couple of lines for the lips. So when you draw the eyebrows, they need to be proportional to the eyes, and that's why you see that there's kind of a larger gap. These seem a little higher on the forehead because of the size of those eyes. Notice that when a head is turned in a 3/4 point of view, the eyebrows sort of shift over to the left because of the shape of the forehead. Here you can see that I'm beginning to draw this mouth larger in proportion to the face and reduced in size, quite a bit reduced over on this face. So we're going to see this combined effect of the enlarged eyes and the shrunken mouth. Let's go ahead and do the last bit of guidelines here, just drawing the neck and the shoulders, which should be pretty much identical for both drawings. So yeah, pretty much the same on both drawings. Notice when you're doing a head in a 3/4 point of view that the lines of the neck shift over to the right, in this case to the right of the chin, and usually coming in somewhere in this area of the earlobe on both drawings. Now it's time for me to zoom in a little more closely, and we are going to do some real-time drawing to sort of refine the details. At least on this side, we may have to speed through. On this side. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so you can see the first thing I did was to erase those initial guidelines. I think now is a good time to do that. Was using a kneaded eraser. This is a nice one for covering large spaces and not producing so much of the sort of eraser dust that comes from typical erasers. But let's go ahead and take these simple lines of the eyebrows and begin to widen them out. One interesting thing that happens in the 3/4 point of view, at least the way that I draw faces, is that the eyebrow line over here can very lightly connect with the bridge of the nose. And again, the key for me is keeping it really light and not calling too much attention to it. In fact, some of these initial guidelines end up being erased or greatly muted over the course of the drawing. Now, I've got lots and lots of videos that take you through the process of drawing eyes. I've got a whole playlist, and I will link to that. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of quickly give a little bit of refinement to these eyes. Suffice to say, I feel like everyone should kind of arrive at their own preferred way of drawing eyes. And not even just one way. You can come up with lots of different ways of drawing eyes and drawing them, changing the way you draw them from one drawing to the next. But yeah, if you want a step-by-step video on how to draw eyes like the kind that you see me drawing here, go ahead and click that link in the description. It'll take you to a whole playlist of different videos that do that type of thing. In fact, why don't I just speed through this other eye, because it sort of repeats exactly what you saw me do here. Alright, so let's go ahead and start refining the nose. I have some videos on drawing the nose, but I think I've covered that a little bit less over the years. So let's go ahead and do this all real time here. This nostril is coming over to the just to the right of that initial guideline that we put there, and I find that you got to go real easy when drawing the human nostril. It very quickly calls too much attention to itself. And of course, real noses have quite a complex structure, but I find as an artist, I don't want to draw that structure too much. Towards the end, what you'll see me doing is a bit of shading here, and sometimes illustrators, interestingly, have this way of putting shading above the tip of the nose, even if that's not quite accurate to the way light tends to fall on the human nose unless it's being lit from below. But it can make for an interesting technique. You're sort of hinting at the structure by way of this shading. I'm not going to bother with any of these lines here of the upper lip. I think we see them, of course, in real life, but in drawings very often, unless you're doing a hyper-realistic drawing, it can be a bit too much to draw lines in that area. Now you noticed I just lightly erased away some of that upper lip line. If you're drawing a character that's wearing lipstick, or you can go ahead and sort of have a dark, crisp line there. am choosing not to do that for this character. But again, this is the character whose mouth is, I wouldn't say larger, but just more realistically proportioned to what we see in real life. And it's going to be interesting to hear what people think of this. Which do you prefer? Do you like a facial proportion system that is a little closer to real life, especially in terms of drawing the lips at what appears to be a larger size compared to what we're going to do over on the right-hand side drawing. But you can see me refining the lips here, taking that simple line and sort of breaking it into 3 different parts, bit by bit. And this area over here towards the edge of the mouth can sometimes be darkened, and we're going to start to give her just maybe a hint of a smile. With the lower lip, I may, go ahead and draw a line right here around that edge there, but I don't like to have this part be too clear. So I'm going to just sort of erase away there and maybe just let that all be suggested by way of shading. And I'm keeping my pencil very low to the paper so as to expose a lot of the lead and allow me to do very smooth shading. And so I'm sort of just suggesting the edge of the lip rather than drawing it with lines, but sometimes you do get a little bit of shade just below the lower lip. You can go ahead and put some darkness right there. And that's maybe getting us close to the end of this sort of refining part. I've got a separate video on how to draw the human ear. I guess I'll link to all of this stuff. I know I have this human anatomy playlist that covers all of my different videos, but I don't know if I need to separate that from like a how to draw faces playlist. In any case, we'll be linking to a bunch of different videos, but that saves me going into the trouble of talking too much about how to draw the human ear. Of course, in manga or anime styled drawings, you'll see very inventive ways of drawing the human ear that are not necessarily related to real human anatomy. And what I'm going to do now is just speed through. You're going to see me do essentially the same thing I did here on the other one, more or less exactly the same, but of course the proportions have been changed. I'll do that all in time lapse, and then maybe come back and start to talk about adding hair and stuff like that. Okay, so we've pulled back to be able to view both illustrations side by side, and it is remarkable, isn't it, that when you enlarge the eyes like so, and I think just as importantly, reduce the size of the mouth, you end up with quite a different effect. You sort of view this as almost a different character in a lot of ways, and it does, I think, psychologically give you a feeling of innocence. I think this reminds you of a child's eyes. And of course, this is at the basis of a lot of manga and anime drawings, is the emphasizing the eyes, de-emphasizing the nose and the mouth. Now, interestingly, I haven't de-emphasized the nose too much. Just stylistically, we're going for something that's a little closer to real human anatomy with this sort of like manga-tinged real human anatomy. I'm putting in a line here for the hair where the forehead reaches the hairline. I can't really make this a video about drawing hair, unfortunately. It really is mostly about the proportions, but I did want to just talk a bit about you considering this, not so much about, oh, I want to do a drawing that's exactly like what I see in this video, but to be aware of how shifting the facial proportions can give us a different feeling for a character. And if you've got an original character of your own that you've created, why not play around with those facial proportions? See what happens when you make the eyes smaller or make the eyes larger, or the mouth larger or smaller. And of course, you can even play around with shifting the nose down on the face, and all sorts of different variations that you can play around with when you're drawing your character to find out which is the best, which you prefer. But as I said, I'm not going to sit here and talk too much about drawing hair. I'm going to go ahead and, in time-lapse, bring in old man time-lapse. Finally! When was the last time you let me take part in a video? And he is going to help me speed through this. I am going to do my patented two-pencil method. This black-colored pencil will allow me to darken things quite a bit. We'll sort of finish up the shading, and I will be back with a few final words. Okay, so there you see the two different faces drawn with two different proportion styles. Of course, the big eyes really stand out, but I think changing the size of the mouth also results in quite a big difference. They almost look like two completely different characters. But before I go, I always like to say thank you to anyone who chooses to support me by getting any of my books, like my latest graphic novel, My Last Summer with Cass. Hearing lots of good things from people who've read this book. The Drawing Lesson, my graphic novel that teaches you how to draw, got a sequel to this book coming out next year, and the Mastering Manga Series 1, 2, and 3, my books that teach you how to draw in a manga style. Thanks so much to all of you who have purchased those books, but let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.